All right, let's talk about something that I think we can all agree is, well, it's just plain uncomfortable. But it's so important for our growth, especially when we're part of a community. We're going to dive into how to handle being corrected in public without letting it turn into bitterness that poisons your heart.
Think about it for a second. I'm going to bet the answer is a big yes. Maybe it was at work during a big meeting. Maybe it was at a family dinner or even in a church service. It doesn't really matter where it happens. That feeling, you never forget it.
And yeah, stings is probably the nicest way to put it. It's the sharp, immediate feeling of being totally exposed, humiliated. There's just no getting around that initial shock and pain.
And then the real fun begins, right? The aftershock. Your mind gets stuck in this horrible loop, just replaying the scene over and over and over. You see every single face that was there, you hear the tone of voice they used, and the worst part, you start obsessing over what they must be thinking about you now. It's like this brutal movie that you're forced to watch on repeat in your own head.
So, if we're going to figure out how to move past this, we first have to really understand what's going on inside of us during that moment. Because it's not just one simple feeling. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Okay, this right here gets the absolute heart of it. There are two battles happening at the exact same time. On one side, you've got that raw, gut punch of humiliation. The part of you screaming, "Why did you have to do that in front of everybody?" But at the same time, another part of your brain is fighting a totally different battle over justice, asking, wait a minute, was that even true? Was that fair? And these two powerful forces are just at war inside you.
And that inner war, that conflict, it brings you to a really critical fork in the road. And honestly, the choice you make in that moment is going to determine everything that happens next.
See, if you let that pain just sit there and fester, it almost always leads down a really dark path. It starts with resentment. Then that resentment creates distance between you and that person, or even the whole group. And before you know it, you've completely changed your role. You're no longer a participant, you're a critic, watching everything from the sidelines through this lens of hurt.
And this is what that path looks like at the end of the road. The hurt hardens into what we'd call a full-blown offense. You start saying things like this. Whether you say it out loud or just think it in your heart, this is the exact moment a personal hurt turns into disloyalty.
So, how do we avoid that? How do we keep from going down that road? The key is to completely reframe the experience. We have to learn to look at it from a higher spiritual perspective.
Now I know this can be a really tough pill to swallow when you're hurting, but the idea here is that correction isn't always rejection. In fact, it can be a sign of love. The perspective is that God often works through people, through our leaders, as part of His process to shape us and help us grow.
And this just builds on that same idea. Not every sharp word is meant to be an attack. Sometimes the people who care about us the most are the only ones brave enough to tell us a hard truth. The Bible calls these the faithful wounds of a friend. They might hurt for a moment, but they're meant to heal, not to harm.
And if you want a powerhouse example of this in action, just look at two of the biggest leaders in the early church. And listen, this was not some quiet disagreement they had behind closed doors.
Paul corrected Peter publicly. To his face, it says. Why? Because Peter's actions were publicly causing confusion and leading other people astray. The logic was pretty simple. The mistake was public, so the correction needed to be public too to protect everybody.
But here's the kicker. This is the most important part of the whole story. Peter could have easily gotten bitter. He could have started a Team Peter movement and spent the rest of his life picking apart everything Paul did, but he didn't. Years later, you see him writing and calling Paul our beloved brother. He took the public sting, he grew from it, and he didn't let it break the relationship. That right there, that's our model.
So how do we actually follow that model? How do we become more like Peter? Let's get super practical and walk through 6 concrete steps you can take on the path to healing.
Okay, step 1, just be honest with God. Tell Him it hurt. Tell Him you're embarrassed, you're angry, whatever it is. He can handle your honesty. Step 2, you have to separate the method from the message. Even if the delivery was terrible, you have to ask yourself, was there any truth in what was said? And then step 3, if there was truth, own it. Let that pan push you towards growth, not towards a pity party. And this next part is so important. It's an action you have to take. You must intentionally, consciously break that mental cycle. Make a decision that you are going to stop replaying that movie of your humiliation over and over in your head. Just stop. All right, step 4 is about what you do on the outside. Guard your conversations. The temptation is to go find people who will take your side and tell you how wrong the other person was, but that just fuels bitterness. Don't recruit allies. Step 5, if you feel you need it, is to ask for a private conversation, but notice the goal. You're seeking clarity, not demanding an apology. And finally, step 6, let this experience make you better. Let it make you a safer person, a better leader in the future.
And here's a really helpful little tool for that private conversation. Look at the posture here. It's not defensive or accusatory. It starts by thanking them, which shows you've processed it. Then it vulnerably just shares how it landed on you. The goal isn't a confrontation. The goal is to keep your own heart clean and open. You know, when you boil it all down, this whole thing comes down to the story you choose to tell yourself after it's all over. We have to intentionally rewrite our inner script, that monologue in our heads, from one of bitterness to one of breakthrough.
The first part of that new script is all about perspective. One bad moment, even if it was a really painful moment, doesn't get to erase all the good. Don't let one ugly scene redefine the entire relationship you have with that person.
The second part of the new script is about discernment. Your job is to sift through the correction. Your responsibility is to take any piece of truth you can find and use it to grow. Anything else, anything that was unfair or too harsh or just plain wrong, that's not your burden to carry. You hand that part over to God.
And this last one, wow, this is a total game changer. It completely redefines loyalty. See, mature loyalty isn't about finding people who will never hurt your feelings. That's impossible. Real loyalty is about making a choice to act with honor and keep your own heart clean, even when you are hurt. That is a profound shift.
So in the end, it really does boil down to this simple choice. You're faced with the same initial hurt, but it can lead you down two completely different paths. One path takes that hurt and lets it calcify into hardness and disloyalty. But the other path, the one that takes intentional work, leads to healing, maturity, and wholeness.
Look, the pain of being corrected is probably going to happen again. It's just part of life. But what happens after the pain is totally up to you. That experience can leave a scar that makes you hard and defensive, or it can be a wound that actually heals and makes you stronger, more humble, and more whole. The choice, in the end, is always yours.